Well, thanks everyone for coming, giving up your Sunday evening. Just for a bit of background, Charlie has recently qualified as an ABCC coach. Based on his presentation, Rachel thought it would be a good topic for a webinar. So we've decided to give Charlie the chair this evening. Charlie has a background of racing in France, moved there to pursue a cycling career, hoping to break into the professional scene. Spent 2 years with Team UQ, and then transferred to Elite DN1 team based in the Alps. He's been living and racing in France, and it was a steep learning curve for him, both on and off the bike. In 2022, he began to flourish and build on his previous progression with a colour more tailored to him. And staying with the same team for 2023, he's made a step towards professional ranks with a continual progression and growth with the realistic goals for the coming years. So without much ado, I'll hand over to Charlie.
Okay, so if I go on to the screen. So can we all see this slide okay? Yeah. Okay. And the slides moved as well, just to check. Yeah. Okay. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to my webinar on a basic guide to racing in France. So what really this webinar is going to do is it's going to discuss all of the aspects of racing in France. So it's going to give a real basic overview into everything from the rider and race categories all the way through to sort of the different culture of the French racing scene, the team infrastructure is really a good tool for any juniors or under 23s who are thinking about moving out to France with the ambition of progressing into the professional ranks, or just a general real useful thing for us Brits to have a greater knowledge of the French scene, as I do feel that it is almost, it's a bit of the unknown for a lot of Brits. And the other thing is that I'd like to make clear before the presentation, if anybody's sort of viewing this on YouTube or anything, then to really just, I'm able to be contacted by all forms of social media. It's very easy to find nowadays. So if anybody wants any more questions or anything, then please do get in touch, as my door's always open. So Mark's covered a lot of what I was going to go through this part. So my journey so far in France. So in 2020, I moved to France straight out of juniors at 18. So that by itself is a big thing. Never mind with the ambition of wanting to move up to the professional ranks. So in 2020, I moved to the Bourge-en-Bresse Aim, which is in the southwest of France. And this was with Team U23, a DN1 team. And so coming from as a junior straight up to the ranks, it was a real struggle, not just in the language and the culture, but also in the racing. It's such a step up from what we see as juniors. However, in 2020, it worked out, I think, for me, an okay scenario, as with the pandemic, it meant that the racing was reduced heavily. So we only got to race in February and March, and then a bit in the summer. So it was almost like a trial year for me. And then in 2021, I moved to the same team again. However, it then began to become apparent as I developed as a rider, is that what I needed to do was to move to another region of France, a region that's more tailored to me. and I'll cover this later in the presentation, but what you find is different regions and different areas are tailored to certain riders because of the geography. And in 2020, I then progressed onto a new team, which was Bourge-en-Bresse Aim, which is a bigger DN1 team and one that has a good reputation for riders to go professional, and it's got a more tailored calendar for me as a climber being in the Alps region. So why France? That's a big question that a lot of us ask. So at the end of juniors or during the under 23 years, or even out of under 23, riders are always met with how are they going to pursue their career in professional cycling, because you can't just go from zero to hero. There's got to be steps of progression within that. So at the end of juniors, riders are met with, in my opinion, four decisions or four possible routes. So the first one, as we know, is the GB Academy, which is normally a road and track mixed program. So for me at 18, what I found was that I didn't do any track, so this was not a viable option for me as a rider. The other possibility is domestic racing. Now, in recent years, sadly, we've seen a heavy decline in this, and I really don't think it's a viable option for under 23s to go pro from the domestic racing scene. The new one that we've got a lot of is development squads, which we all know have become sort of the academies for World Tour teams. However, it's limited for a lot of people as it's only for sort of the top people who can go to the development squads. Or the last one is, as we know, it's moving abroad, but where? So Belgium, Holland, Italy, France, and sometimes Spain are the options that a lot of juniors have when they're moving abroad. So when I was junior, I was met with the choice of which country to choose one. And why did I choose France? So Belgium and Holland were highlighted to me when I was speaking with predecessors and people who had a lot of experience. Luckily, I was involved with the Dave Rayner Fund, so they helped. I was able to speak to people who had been on the Dave Rayner Fund and people who were involved in it to sort of choose the right country for me. So Belgium and Holland is very much suited to your sprinters, to your rouleurs, to your people who are very good at flat races. The other thing with that is the support in Belgium and Holland on inter-club teams is quite low. And a lot of the races that you'll be doing week in, week out are kermesse-based races. So not really getting a real racing experience, I feel. The other two are Italy and Spain. So Italy, when I had discussed with a lot of people, the reputation was varied in Italy, and the experiences that people have had with the culture over there was quite a lot harsher than what I'd been told about France. And the Spanish scene, for Spain, the level and the infrastructure is probably closer to that of the UK comparatively to the infrastructure of the French, Belgium, and Italian racing scene. So I was really drawn to France when I discussed with people, and why I stand by France being the best choice for under 23s was, and I'll touch on it more through the presentation, was the infrastructure of the teams, the organisation of the races, and then the final thing was the variability of parcours that there are in France, which I think is crucial for a young under 23 to develop by racing a variety of parcours instead of sort of tunneling themselves into just being able to be a climber in Italy or a classics rider in Belgium. So the opportunities in France. Before I touch on the opportunities in France, there might be a few familiar faces that you recognise from this amateur team, CC Atoop. So the chap in the centre is a young lad from Bury. So that's Adam Yates. I think that this was back in 2013 when he rode for CCA Toup. And on the far right there is Frenchman Warren Barguil, who was also riding with Adam Yates on CCA Toup at the same time. So building on why I chose France, the first thing that I touched on was the structure of the races. So a lot of these races have been running for 50 years, so 50 years plus. So you go to an elite national in France and it will say 50th edition. The other thing is that because of this history of the races is that they're able to fully close roads in France, and they'll be able to run 160k races on fully closed roads, and you'll only do maybe a circuit at the finish of 10k 4 times, and the rest will just be fully open roads. The second thing is the structure and organization of the teams. So the way that it works is you have a lot of big French clubs that are just like any UK cycling club, but a lot bigger. And then on top of that is that you'll have an elite cycling team. So it's almost like you've got a continental team, and below it is actually a club itself, which provides so much more security and infrastructure for the French team. So you don't see French teams come and go the way that you do in the UK, which means that the scene is a lot safer. The other thing is that the parcours and difficulty of the races. So a large variety of parcours at different difficulty really offer a great variety of racing for young riders. Moving on from this is the links that French teams have to professional teams, and the links that French teams also have with agents, which is really crucial in breaking through to the modern day pros. So a lot of French agents look into the amateur scene, and it's a great opportunity and a great place to get stagiaireships, which is a traineeship where World Tour riders take young under 23s into the pro ranks for a short period at the end of the season, normally around August to October. So rider categories, which is a bit more of a specific thing to touch upon. So in the UK, we have a point system, as we all know, that splits riders into 5 categories. In France, there are 3 categories, so third, second, and first. And the junior categories work in the same way for any juniors who are interested. And the juniors also have their own national series, but can race in senior races, the same in the UK. So categories are not based on a point system like we have in the UK. The license can be bought by a club or the individual. So the most expensive license is the first cap. However, once you score a certain amount of French Federation points, like in the UK, you can no longer buy a second cat license. You have to be a first cat every single time. However, if you're going into your first year as a senior, so if you're a junior at 18, to be able to take a first category license straight away, you have to score a certain amount of FFC points or a certain amount of UCI points as a foreign rider. So not a lot of 18-year-olds are first cats, a lot of them are second cats. The French amateur racing scene does not separate under 23s, or as they call it, espoir races, apart from their French championships, which are held in the middle of August. However, regularly, as many races do, they have a Maillot Blanc competition for the under 23s. France also does have several under 23 races that are UCIs scattered throughout the season, like Ronde Hazard and Paris Tours, and normally DN1 teams or French teams do get invited to these. So great opportunities for young under 23s to show themselves as hopefuls for the future. So team classifications. So this is where it gets very complicated for a lot of Brits, as they see DN1, they see DN2, they don't understand, as we don't have this the same system as the French do, as the French system is so much bigger and so much more complex. So within the French amateur scene, there are also team classifications. So we have national division 1, 2, and 3. And alongside this, we also have Bourge-en-Bresse Aim, which means not divisionally ranked. So teams must meet a certain criteria to make these classifications. And when I discuss with people is what's the difference between DN1, DN2, DN3, is I say it's very similar to the professionals. So in the professionals, we have World Tour, Pro Continental, and then we have Continental. So it's similar to that. The World Tour teams have the biggest budget and the best riders, as do the DN1 teams in France. So for 2023, we have 28 DN1 teams, 21 DN2 teams, and 20 DN3 teams within France. So Bourge-en-Bresse Aim, as I touched on, not divisionally ranked, are the equivalent to clubs in France and are not obliged to any criteria apart from the usual regulations of that the FFC, the French Federation, enforces. So similar to the UK, they've just got to meet the BC guidelines or their equivalent sporting body. So right now it's changed from previous years. So the national division teams are now subject to promotion and relegation, similar to the World Tour teams, with a new style point system that's very similar, that was introduced in 2022 and will now be enforced the next season. So it is becoming a lot more like a league, whereas before it was budget based. So here's a quick table for everybody to have a look at. I'll just give a run through of everything. So these are the minimal requirements that the FFC enforces for a national 1, 2, and 3 team to meet the criteria to be able to gain. So what they have to do is they have to have a big meeting at the heads of the team. If the team wants to put an application forward, they have to go to Paris and they have to apply to the French Federation to be able to gain their license, which is normally valid for 3 years, and then they have to review again. So for National Division 1, a minimum squad size of 14 with 12 first category riders, same as the UK, and 2 first cat under 23 riders, with an advised budget of 250 grand. However, this is the minimum. When we look at French teams, they have a lot more higher budget than that, with full-time salaried coach and two part-time salaried director sportifs and an FFC licensed doctor. And if we look at National 2, similar again, but just slightly smaller on the minimum squad size, smaller budget, but also 2 part-time salaried people, and other staff normally are within the team, but are not requirements. So things like a masseuse, a mechanic, an osteopath, all sorts of things like that. And finally, going to National 3, they have to have an advised budget of 50 grand and are a slightly smaller team. So race classifications. Similar to the UK, races are categorized and vary in level. The main races within a French calendar that you'll find as an under 23 are elite nationals, Toots categories, and finally the Coupe de France series, which is linked to the rankings of divisional teams. So the distance and parcours of these races tend to differ depending on your region. So if you're in the Alps, then they're going to be a lot more alpine. There's not that many mountainous races, sort of lower alpine races, or if you're in Normandy, it's going to be a lot flatter races. However, elite nationals do tend to differ on what's called a Toots cap. So the French calendar will have numerous elite nationals. So that's, I'd say, an elite national. If we were talking on UK standard of racing, this is your equivalent to a Nat A, and a Toots cat every week, which is equivalent to a Nat B. However, you could, if you were traveling around France, you could, in the peak of the season, you could probably do about 4 elite nationals in a week if you wanted to. So finally, higher level amateur teams will also have several UCI 1.2s and UCI 2.2s within their calendar due to guest rides. And this is a great opportunity for young lads who are hoping to step up. So going on from this, a bit more detailed of the race classifications. And I am able to send over these tables if anybody wants them, because they're quite easy to see. So the top is the Coupe de France, which is the equivalent to a UK national race series and splits into the three divisions, DN1, DN2, DN3, and are very prestigious and high level races. And the eligible teams for them are DN1 teams only for the DN1 Coupe de France, etc., etc. So moving on from this is the second sort of tier race, which is an elite national. So these really, even though they're the same level and the same category, the national races do vary in prestige. So you can have elite national tours, you can have 1 days, 2 days. So some attract the best teams, however, others are more regionally focused. So the eligible teams for this are French UCI Conti teams, foreign UCI Conti teams, the French national teams, foreign elite teams, and French teams. So that can be your DN1 teams, your DN2 teams, your DN3 teams, your Horse DN. So that's just purely category based. So you can enter them as an individual. The one after that is Épreuve Nationale and Circuit Fermé. So that's a crit. They're not very popular in France, so sort of less than 3 kilometers. The one after that is a 1-2-3 junior. So I touched on this before, but it was called another name. So that's a Toot Cat race. So this is a regional race similar to that we have in the UK, but very different, as I've done Toot category races, the equivalent of a regional A that has been 120 kilometers A to B. So when we talk about regional elite races, is if we were told in the UK that we were doing a point-to-point race that was 120k on closed roads, they don't exist anymore in the UK. So it's really that high level of races. So also on this one is what you can have is an open pass rider. So that's somebody who's on a day license. So you're not a elite rider, you're not fully categorized. So anybody can go and enter this. You then have similar descended to the UK, 2-3 juniors and 3 juniors. And the final one is departmental, which is very similar to a Go Ride race that we have in the UK. So the Coupe de France, as I touched on before, so this involves the 3 divisionally ranked teams. So the Coupe de France is the most prestigious amateur race series in France. So the Coupe is divided into 3 divisions, as I've touched on, DN1, DN2, DN3. So throughout the year, the teams in each division, so they can come all across France. So you've got Division 1 teams in Normandy, Brittany, Rhône-Alpes, Pyrenees, Paris. So they come together for a series of races across France. The format usually for each DN1, DN2, DN3 Coupe is 2 one-day races and a tour and a team time trial. So what happens with this is they change every year. So normally it's a race with an elite national status applies at the end of the year to then become a Coupe de France for that year. So if one year a race might be an elite nat, the following year it might be a Coupe de France, the year after that it might be an elite nat, or it could be 1 year a DN1 Coupe de France, 1 year a DN3 Coupe de France, the next year an elite national. So they sort of have to apply for it. And at each round, riders will be able to score points that accumulate over the season, and the individuals and teams with the most points get crowned the Coupe de France winners for DN1, DN2, DN3. So moving on from what I touched on before is now the teams can be relegated and promoted from the 3 divisions. So it's almost becoming a football league in some terms. So what is to be expected from a French team? So the level of support varies on of the team, DN1, DN2, DN3. Generally speaking, French teams offer a great amount of support on numerous levels. So on a DN1 team, you'd sort of be expecting a bike, equipment, clothing, then anything that's to do with race is normally covered by the team. So your race accommodation, your race entries, race licenses, travel, food, and then other things like a lot of DN1 riders receive a salary, quite similar to that we saw of the UK continental teams about 10 years ago. For foreign riders, a lot of the time they'll have apartments, and a lot of the time at DN2 it's a similar level. So the infrastructure is really great in these teams. So due to the infrastructure of the French scenes, non-cycling related sponsors help boost the team budgets, making it ideal for riders that need support. So what the French scene relies on, it relies on others outside sponsors, not just cycling. And it really, and because of the history and how much the popularity of the sport that cycling is in France, it means that outside sponsors get involved. So for instance, my team is sponsored by Intermarché, French supermarket. It's Bresse Bleu, which is a blue cheese company. You see Sojason just on there, which is a soya milk company. So I've touched on what's included. So really, if you're on a good DN1 team, is that as a young rider, you are going to be catered for well. And how can you find this information? So this is what a lot of people are unknown about. Is it sounds very simple, but to have a look on social media and to have a look at the teams that you're wanting to go to and just have a bit of a stalk and look, okay, so all their riders are on the same bike, they're using this equipment, and you can really tell just from the setup of the team of probably it gives you an inkling onto what sort of support they'll offer. So the level of French racing. So we've got another two chaps here. So on the left there's Romain Bardet, and then on the right there's Thibaut Pinot, both racing for French amateur teams. So a big shock to many young riders when moving to France is the level of French racing, and the depth and the strength of the fields can be world class. Speaking from previous experience, I've done UCIs and raced with guys who have come to France who are ex-pros. So for example, a lot of the BNB guys, when the team sadly went bust, they've all gone to DN1 teams now. So the real level of the field is the same as Continental and the same as UCIs. The support, and as touched on, the support and infrastructure within the scene means that it's the same level as UCI Continental. And this is why we see amateurs step straight up to the professional ranks and start performing straight away. So a lot of these new French guys who burst onto the scene, is the reason why is because they've been amateurs before, and the level's so high is that the jump, they don't seem to struggle with it. So this is clear by the strength shown in the raw data. So if I take some examples needed to perform in elite nationals and Coupe de France, so a lot of the times is that you hear riders talk about sort of 6 watts plus 6 watts per kilo plus for climbs, things like 300 watts for a rider around 70 kilos for a 4-hour race is really not unheard of. And you compare the data of the pros to what amateurs are doing, and the gap is very small. And I think this is something that young riders do have to step back and think about. Is when I moved to France, is I had the same shock. Is you think that you'll come to France, win some bike races, then go pro. No. When you come at 18, it's really important that you step back and you really map out that you're going to do 4 years, you're going to do 3 years, and I'm going to go from a junior to eventually catch these guys, but there's a lot of work in between and a lot of bike racing in between. This is further solidified by the quantity of stagiaires and professionals, as we see from these two chaps who have grown into world class bike riders. So where in France? So this is an interesting one that I think a lot of people overlook. because they don't understand the French scene. So different areas of France offer different style of races and are often tailored to a different profile of rider, which can be difficult for. So which reason is for you as a rider? So generally speaking, we split France into East and West when discussing it from a bike racing point of view, and the French do a similar thing. So West is Hauts-de-France, Normandy, Bretagne, Pays de Loire, and Aquitaine, or the East, which is Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, Bourgogne-Commune, Grand Est, Aix-en-Provence, and Occitanie. So the reason why we split it into two is because of the style of races and also the terrain. So in the west of France, it's a lot more tailored to your rouleurs, sprinters, and puncheurs because of the terrain. So when you do have climbs, they're quite short, 5-minute climbs that we see in Brittany, and a lot of it is flat racing, fast, aggressive, and you need a lot of power. Whereas to the east of France, it's a lot more tailored to a climber. And we see this in the teams, their focus, the races that they do. And the two sides of France really do vary, and it is heavily overlooked. So I would definitely say to any people who are applying for teams to really look at, is the East for me or is it the West, because of what races I want to do. So the French style of races, in many aspects, the French scene differs to that of the British scene. And one way is the aggressive nature of the races. So I've touched on this before. The depth and the fields are similar to that of a professional standard. Really high level, the depth is really high. So when it's gone really hard in a French race, and it'll be 100K in, you'll look around, and in a UK race, there might be 20 or 30 guys left. In France, there'd be 100. So what are the parcours like, and how are they different from the UK, and how does that influence the style? So a lot of the time in France is you'll find that they'll do a big tour of somewhere, or a grand boucle as they'll call it, and then they'll then go into the finish line once, and then they'll do some smaller circuits. So generally speaking, you'll tend to do one tour of probably about 100 kilometers, just A to B. And then you'll then finish on a finishing circuit, probably about 10 to 20 kilometers. And you'll then do this 3 or 4 times. So what that tends to lead, in the one-day races, you tend to have a sort of world champ situation. And they do race it flat out, and then a real aggressive finish after the road races. The parcours also heavily vary. So depending on the region, some it might be 120K race with 3,000 meters of elevation. In another place, it might be 900 meters of elevation, which really gives a rider a real variety of races. So the length of races also varies depending on the classification. So a Toots cat will probably somewhere between 100 to 130K, whereas an elite national will probably be around 130 to 180K. As touched on, the aggression and chaos of French races, it's indescribable. The roles of the teams also is interested in France. So a lot of the time is you won't ride for one rider. A lot of the time there'll be several riders within a team that can win the race. So they'll race it very similar to a professional team like Ethics, Quick Step. So they'll race the race flat out and be really aggressive with their tactics. So moving on from this is some useful links that are really good tools and applications for people who are wanting to do more research into the scene. So the first one is a site called Direct Velo. So hopefully I should click onto this and it should come through. So this is the equivalent of, it's not the British cycling page, but it is the sort of Velo UK page of the French scene. There we go. So when we look onto this is a really good tool for anybody that's interested in the French scene. So here you have things like the results, the engage, which is the entries into the race, reactions, so race reports, things like that. You also have the races, so a calendar, an overview of all the important races, results, and then a Coupe de France section. The most important, you can also view the peloton, so every single rider that is in France, the mutations, which is the transfers for the 2023 season. The most important tool for any young riders who want to come to France, and I'll touch on this when applying to teams in France, is the teams. So here you can filter it by the region, and then here you see is the list of DN1, DN2, and DN3 teams, as well as French DN. So what you can do here is you can look at where the team's based. You can look at their riders. You can get that information, and this is a real good starting point for guys who want to research teams. So for instance, if you go on to my team here, so you click on to that, and then you can then go on to.
We're not seeing the same as you. We've still got the useful links page.
Hello?
Yeah, we're seeing the useful links. We're not seeing the same screen as yours.
Oh, is it screen? Oh, is it not? It's done this before.
Yeah. When you clicked on the link, we didn't see where it went to.
Hello?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Oh, can you just not see the? Can you
Yeah,
not see the
we're
screen?
not seeing. That's right. We're not seeing your web page.
Screen sharing. Oh, sorry about that. I think it's. Could you see the? Could you see some? Could you see the direct velo?
No,
Yeah.
no, we weren't seeing. No, yeah, we've seen the just your presentation, but we weren't seeing your web page.
When you clicked on the direct velo link, it didn't come up.
Oh, did the link not come up at all?
No, not for us.
Okay, sorry about that. I think it should. Is it up now? I think it's because of the internet. It's not very strong. Yeah. It's. Can you see the page now?
Yeah, that's
yes.
fine.
Yes, we're seeing the web page now. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I think it was just because I clicked on the web page through the presentation, so it didn't want to come up. So as you can all see the web page now, because I'm sure before you were a bit confused as to what I was talking about. So this is Direct Velo, the very useful tool. So as you can see, I touched on it before, is you've got your news articles on the latest races, you've got your results, and then you've also got your engage, which is your entries into the races. So you've got all this great information, which is readily available online. You've also got your courses, which is your races, your calendar, your results, Coupe de France. You've also got the peloton, which is transfers, teams, and then there's the full archive of all the teams, all the riders. So it's quite similar to a Velo UK, Pro Cycling Stats, First Cycling Stats for the French racing scene. So hopefully this works this time, because so So hopefully now you should all see the teams. So this is where you can access a full list of the teams, as I was talking about before. So you can see the DN1 teams, you can see the DN2 teams, the DN3 teams, where they're based, things like that. And they also put on the rankings of the teams. So as the season goes on, teams will accumulate points. So if you go on to my team, for example, you'll then be able to see all the information. So the results, the actualities, the statistics, so how many races they've won, things like that. You'll be able to go onto each individual rider, the rider profiles, and then at the bottom here, there's also the contact details, which is really, really useful for any young riders. So if I now share onto. So I'll just go back onto the presentation now, as I had to close the window. So the second page that I wanted to show, and I'll just show it now, was the French Federation site. And this is the same as British cycling. So the main important thing for anybody that's looking at any events or possibly is on holiday in France or wants to do some races in France, really, this is the place to go. So if you go on to the French Federation website, and then you go on to Evenements, and then on to Calendar Route, which is the road calendar. So this is where you can be able to enter races. As I said, if you're coming as a junior, you're on holiday, all the sort of things like that, all the sort of possibilities that you may decide that you want to race in France just for a short period. So here it's this exact same as any other website. CTT is you've got route, departments, which is the region, the period, the type of race, and the categories of license. So what you'd recommend here is then finding the race, and then what I recommend doing is finding the email of the event organizer and emailing them with your license and saying, I'd like to do the race. And I've had this with a lot of British guys, is that the French have gone, yeah, that's fine, no worries, and they've gotten race entries pretty easily. So I'll just go on to sharing the next back onto the PowerPoint, as it wouldn't let me go directly. There we go. So hopefully you can all see the PowerPoint. The next bit is applying to teams. So for many juniors and young riders, applying to teams can be daunting, as it was for me at 18, as I did find it difficult to find a team. But breaking it down into steps, I think can really help. So creating your rider CV, what to include. So I'll touch on this in a sec. I've got an example, my example, and this should be useful on what to include in a rider CV. So the second thing, as I mentioned, is researching the right team and region for you to optimize your profile as a rider. So being, okay, I'm a climber, I'm going to go to the east of France. So I'm going to go onto Direct Velo. I'm going to look at which teams there are. I'm going to note their emails, go onto their Facebook page, their social medias, find the contacts, do some of my own research, and then email them. Be realistic. So if depending on your results as a junior, the chances are is that a top DN1 team is not going to take you straight away. So be realistic within yourself and to know what results you've got in the past. So contacting the teams, emails, telephone, or social media, you can find all the information online, or utilizing your own contacts is really good. So if you know chaps who are in France, who are on good teams, is a really good thing to do with your predecessors, is to message them, email them, ask, okay, do you have your DS's contact details? How long to wait? And don't put all your eggs in one basket. So don't wait too long. If you've emailed one team, they've had a bit of contact, probably email another. Keep emailing, keep your options open. And before signing the contract, make sure that you read through everything and check over everything and look at all your possible options. So here's an example of my rider CV. So you've got a thing like a personal statement, which tells you about yourself, a brief overview. Then certain things like your rider type, strengths, personality. So a few sort of bullet points, weight, height, then a short palmarès of your top results. And then I've also put in a power profile, and then performances in races. So your top performances power wise, and for certain races, as I've been asked for it in the past when I've been discussing with teams, is they've been keen to have access to my Training Peaks or whatever platform you'll use. And then other useful links, so your social medias, interviews, first cycling stats, things like that. So the boring bit. So after Brexit, riders coming to France have to make the right legal requirements to reside in the country, as it's all changed. So first choice that riders have is visas. So you can first apply for a visitor's visa, which is up to 12 months, but you can only apply for a visitor's visa every other year. So you could probably do it for your first year, but then you'd have to wait for a year. The other one is a talent visa, which you could get in your second year. So that's what you can get after, but you have to provide a lot more information for a talent visa. So you have to provide your team information, that you're salaried, that you are in France for a sporting reason. Whereas a visitor's, it's a lot more easier to apply for. For some lucky people, a residency card is a viable option. However, this would normally come after your visa, or if you have resided in France for a longer period of time prior to Brexit. For the very, very lucky people, a dual nationality is possible. If you've got a UK and an EU country passport, you'll be able to reside in France like we were able to prior to Brexit. The last thing is, if you're wanting to race in France for a short period, is you're able to reside in an EU country for 90 days out of 180, so 3 months every 6. So just to finish off, a quick French checklist, just something to rattle through if you move to France, or something to tell juniors about, or young riders. So researching teams and tailoring the decision upon your strengths and weaknesses as a rider is very crucial to having a successful career within the French scene. So as I said, if you're a climber, go to the east. If you're a puncher, go to the west. Creating a strong rider CV, even in French if it's possible, and contacting teams early on in the season, April, May, make first contact, have some discussions with them, and it will really strengthen your chances, because the places on French teams get snatched up very quickly. Confirming the arrangements with the team and having trust within them is very important. So the contract, the accommodation, organizational details, and race calendars. A useful tool again is speaking to Brits or foreign riders who had been on the team prior, because a lot of French teams have had foreign riders. Making the necessary legal requirements. So visas, insurance, medical insurance, and race license are all very important, as a lot of Brits I know are pushing the boundaries of legality right now after the post-Brexit. and if something went wrong, then they're not covered. Asking possible predecessors and other British riders for advice. Send them a message, ask them, how was it? What do I need? Learning the language is really important. First year I didn't speak French, and in 2021 I decided to bite the bullet and get a tutor for the season. It helped me and helped me a lot, and you then become integrated within the scene. You've got friends, you've got very helpful contacts if you know French. Visiting the team in off season is really important. Going to see the team before you move out there can help you and decrease the anxiety that you may have. A strong and quality pre-season training to reduce the step up to the French racing scene. Research and detailing your French calendar. So how might races possibly be raced? What might the parcours be like, to plan and prepare for the season? So I'm going to peak for this point. Really plan, because you'll be racing a lot. Making your life in France as homely as possible and comfortable as possible is really important. So making sure that you've got an escape from cycling, making sure that you've got friends in France, making sure that you drive out to France with your parents to bring some of your stuff out so that you can make the French apartment as comfortable as possible. So that's the presentation finished. I hope that everybody enjoyed it, and any questions? So I'll stop screen sharing now.
Okay, I've got no questions on the chat, but if anyone's got anything, please pipe up now.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Charlie, it's Steve here. Thanks very much for that. Just wanted to ask, what sort of provide in your contract? I mean, how tied are you, and what do they expect from you?
How tied am I within my contract? So it depends on sort of, as everything does. So the level of team. So the lower level teams will have a bit more of an amateur approach to it, and they will have less from you. But within my contract, so I have an X number of race days per year. Then the sort of the usual things like looking after equipment, looking after kit. It's not as in-depth as a professional contract as such, but things like, yeah, looking after equipment, a certain amount of race days per year, that you'd work for the team, just a more general sort of team work ethic, or what the team wants of you, rather than details that may be in a professional contract.
I don't know if you can see the chat there. There's a few questions popped up.
Yeah.
If not, I'll read them out.
Yeah, I can
right.
read them out. Do you want me to do the how much of a jump was it from GB juniors?
Carry on.
Yeah. So it was quite a big very big jump, I think, in all aspects of the racing. So not just the raw data, the power, the strength. It was everything from the bunch. The bunches are bigger. The bunches are 200 riders. That you're racing with men. When you tap them on the shot, when you tap them on the thigh to get past them, to get through a gap, they'll just move into the gap. They descend quicker, they take corners quicker. It's like being in a pro peloton. However, I'd say the main tip, I think, if we go on pure training tip from juniors to continental racing, I'd say endurance. I'd say make sure that you're doing more zone 2 work to really get a good base, because the thing is that, well, as we've seen on today's result in one of the French early season races, Josh Tarling, who's 18, he's stepped up to the pros. It was a 15K TT, and he came second, which shows that a lot of these juniors, they have the speed, they have the power in the lower numbers, but it's when can you then do that at the end of a 3-hour race. The tip that I'd give to juniors, aside from training, I'd say give yourself time to progress. Don't come to France and think that you're going to go pro within a year. Give yourself 4 years, give yourself 3 years to really progress as a rider. And then in 4 years, so say to yourself, at the end of under 23s, that's when I want to be winning bike races, not next year at the end. So I hope that answers that. The second question is it easy for a junior to get an entry to a French national in the race? Generally speaking, I think I'm not sure, but I'd probably say yes for a British junior to get an entry to a national race, not a UCI race. So the best way that I'd go about this is doing your own research, doing it early on, researching a French junior national race by the FFC or Direct Velo, and emailing the organisers. I know guys who have got entries into an elite nationals just from emailing them. They email them, they go, yeah, that's fine. And then you just send over, what you'd need is a British cycling license. And then you'd send over your UCI number, and then you'd have to have a letter of permission from British Cycling to race in France. So I think probably there's a high chance that you'd be able to get an entry to a French national races. I know that juniors had done it before. And also what would be useful if the junior was able to send over some sort of palmarès to the French organisers. I think they'd really appreciate that, because it would give them an insight into how good of a rider they are. Yeah. The third question is, how do juniors riders balance their education and racing? So when I know that a few juniors, some juniors who I raced with didn't actually continue with education, which I thought was quite silly. And then depending on the course that you did, it varied for different people. So some people who were doing a BTEC or a diploma had a lot less school than somebody who was doing an A-level. So what I found is making sure that the bike was still, when I was juniors, because I was racing junior nationals and UCIs, is that the bike was the bike should be an escape as a junior. The bike should not be the entire focus. For riders who are wanting to go to France or even pursue a professional career, is they should still be going to sixth form, college, wherever, between 16 and 18, getting their back up, and then being okay. Now I'm going to go and race my bike for X amount of years, but you've always got that backup. And it should really just be about racing for fun in juniors, going out and going on a chain gang on the weekend, or doing a cross race, but then also focusing, because I was focused as a junior, I focused on the UCIs that we did, the nationals, but it should still be for fun. And yeah, it should be an escape from education, but it should be more than a 50-50 balance, as education should take the lead in it. And also things like, when I've spoken to juniors, they say, oh, I didn't do much training this week, I've been focusing on school. Is that's a real good thing, is that you should take into consideration when training that education does give more stress, and that will affect you on and off the bike. Leading on from that, I noticed that you only talk about racing as a man. Do you have any information of how junior women can get into racing and onto the continent? So my knowledge on women's racing isn't huge. However, I know that Dave Rayner Fund offers I think for this year they're offering a gateway scheme for women who want to go racing onto the continent. Sadly, as as women's cycling is still catching up with the men's with the support and the structure, is that in France there are French teams, but they're, for a foreign rider, I don't think they'd offer anywhere near the support as British as the men's teams. What I'd really recommend is there's quite a few women and girls who had been on Dave Rayner in previous years who had ridden in Belgium and France, and they had they've been on foreign teams. So if anybody does want any more information on that, the best thing to do is to research them and sort of ask them for their advice. However, I think the European scene has a lot to catching up to do for women's continental racing. But I do actually believe that the Spanish scene for women's racing has gotten really good over the past few years, which is great to see. But yeah, for women's racing in France, I don't have a lot of knowledge other than the fact that there are divisions, but that's about it. Yeah, Millie Knight raced in Belgium. That's she, and I think there's a few others as well. I think a lot of them go to Belgium because it means that because teams don't give a house or an apartment, so it means that a lot of them who are on different teams are able to live in one house and split the rent.
Okay, well, if we've got no more questions, I'll wrap things up and say thanks very much, Charlie. It's very interesting and very informative.
Yeah, no worries. And if anybody's got any more questions or queries, my door's always open, as I said.
Yeah, thank you very much there, Charlie. Absolutely brilliant presentation, and I hope everybody found that really useful tonight. So the recording will be going up. Details will be the recording will go up onto our YouTube channel, and as I've said in the publicity, this is actually a public webinar. So the link will be publicly searchable on YouTube, and you are welcome to share it with any up and coming budding juniors that you may know who fancy becoming a pro rider and following in Charlie's footsteps. So thank you very much.